Hello and welcome. This is a review of the Yi 4K Plus action camera, which makes the claim that it is the best action camera ever. But is it really? Well, in my opinion, yes, for the money, this is the best you can buy. At a suggested retail price of $339, you can occasionally get this on sale or with coupons from the Yi store, and that is where I recommend buying this device from. This comes out like this, and it's a very nice box. Now, the Yi 4K action camera comes only with the action camera, the waterproof case, and a battery and a USB Type-C connector. Now, for most people, that may be enough to get started, particularly if you have purchased a prior Yi 4K action camera. You will need to get a memory card, and the memory card has to be a U3 Class 10 in order for the camera to work with it. Now, the only problem that you may have with an SD card of that class is that your computer may have trouble getting video files off of it like my 2013 MacBook Pro did. But fear not, because you are supplied with a rather nice USB Type 3 cord so that you don't have to take the SD card out. You just leave that straight in the camera and use the USB Type-C cord to connect your camera to your computer and transfer the files that way. It is fast enough and does not have errors in transferring the video files, which was the issue I was getting. You also get a plethora of nice little cards telling you how to basically operate your camera. And you get a 1400 hour milliamp battery, which is supposedly good for about an hour at 4K at 60 frames per second, and up to about 2 hours to 2 hours and 30 minutes in some of the lower resolution modes. That I have not really tested yet. And there's the waterproof case. It's really nice. It has plastic on it. You're going to want to peel that off so that you can see the screen and so that you will have a clean lens. Now, a lot of people complain that you cannot use the touch screen behind that waterproof case, but you can use your Wi-Fi app, or you can use what they call the home mode, which should allow for easier operation. And there you see that it has your typical little waterproof mount to 1/4-inch screw mount, and that's good for if you wanted to attach it to a tripod, or like I have, a C-shape stabilizer rig. And there's the camera. It's got that nice textured Kevlar-looking front. It's not actually Kevlar, so don't shoot at it or anything. That would be bad. The lens has a piece of plastic on it, and so does the back, and you're going to want to go ahead and peel that off. There is one button on the top that turns it on, that starts and stops recording, and that takes a picture. And you only need one button because you have a touch screen, and you touch the screen, and that is how you take care of all of your needs on the Yi 4K action camera. Now, some other things you're going to want to buy, like I bought, is basically extra batteries and a battery charger designed for the Yi 4K Plus. I have purchased the Mower battery charging system, which comes with 2 extra batteries and a battery charging cradle. So you can charge those 2 extra batteries and the Yi battery on a little charging cradle, and it's supposed to be faster than charging it in the camera. And I haven't tried charging a battery in the camera, but it took about 2 hours to charge all 3 batteries, which is pretty darn good. And I will put a link in the description at the end on where you can find that Mower battery charger and the batteries. so far that's really the only one that I've seen out there that works with the Yi 4K, and I believe the original Yi, Yi 4K and the Yi 4K Plus. So there you are. There you see it. It's a little blurry. I do apologize. I was sort of just running and gunning on those shots, ladies and gentlemen. So again, there's the camera. Now, I've had the Thai T5e, and you're going to say, well, what happened to it? Well, the screen got cracked in an incident with a dog, and the dog is okay, and the camera was sort of okay. But then I updated the firmware, and Lord, it sort of bricked the camera, and I was able to get the firmware working again, sort of. And I was just having trouble with it, and there was no real support for the Thai. I tried reaching out to them, saying, hey, can you help me? I don't care about the screen, but the firmware situation, and there just wasn't a lot of support, and that's kind of a deal breaker for me. And yes, as you can tell, I'm overdubbing this audio because the audio that came straight out of my Canon was a little crispy. So, yeah. And I just wanted to do this narration. So, what is the Yi 4K Action Plus camera all about? Well, stay tuned because I'm about to tell you all about it. So what is the Yi 4K Action Plus, and why should you care? Well, Yi 4K Action Plus is the first action camera that I know of that does true 4K at 60 frames per second. And it does this using an Ambarella H2 system-on-chip chip. It also features USB Type-C, raw photo support, electronic image stabilization at everything but 4K at 60 FPS, and live streaming. Again, the Ambarella H2 is the newest chip from Ambarella. It is significantly upgraded from the one in the original Yi 4K. And it improves processing power and reduces the amount of power needed to power the processor, and consequently it's supposed to run cooler and more efficiently on battery power. Now it does also have electronic image stabilization, so 4K at 30 FPS has image stabilization. It works really well. We're going to see that coming up. I promise this is going to be a long review, so let's just hang in there. It's got voice command. You can say Yi take a photo, Yi shoot burst, Yi start recording, Yi stop recording, and Yi turn off. And it sort of captures your voice print, and then in most environments should be able to capture your voice. And there you see my C-shape stabilizer rig, which is really nice for just helping out the image stabilization, because it is electronic, but it is very good. But depending on the situation, I think it always helps to have some extra type of stabilization, but that's just me. Also, the Yi 4K Plus comes with USB Type-C, and you want to know why that's great? Because it's faster charging, faster connectivity, allows AV out if you're still using that, and external mic, which is something the original Yi 4K just couldn't do. Oh, and the transfer data rate for the Type-C connector is 40 megabytes per second, as opposed to 20 for the 4K model, and around 15 for the GoPro Hero 5. Now here we are, we're looking at the camera, and it's nice, and it actually feels substantial, and it feels well put together. It's got that little checkerboard pattern. You see it's got your tripod screw on the bottom, and it tells you right what it is, Yi 4K Plus. It's got an LED on the front, and it's got an LED on the top with a button. And it's got a battery door on the bottom and on the side, which you'll see in a minute. It has a little flip door for the USB Type-C, which is the only connection on the camera. There is that very nice screen, which is, obviously because it's a more expensive camera, it's a touch screen, and it is better resolution, better brightness, and better color depth than the one on the ThiEye T5e. But again, we're talking about a different class of cameras. The ThiEye T5e is a budget camera. This is not a budget camera. And there is the battery. It looks pretty much like any other action camera battery for any other action camera. You can get those aftermarket Moar batteries, but the Yi 4K original stock battery will probably last a bit longer. And there is the ceremonial tearing off of the plastic on that touchscreen. And I just really like the way this camera looks. So let's talk now a little more about the actual features. Again, you can take photos in the RAW format, and you can live stream your world. Now this was recently released in a firmware update. It was not originally available with this camera, but it came in a firmware update. You can also keep your accessories if you plan on upgrading from your Yi 4K model to the Yi 4K Plus, and that's what the inside of the battery draw looks like, and that's also where you put in your micro SD card, which again is going to be a U3 Class 10, and I would buy from the recommended brands because there has been some issue with people having capability. Now this is the demo mode. So it comes with a demo mode that sort of tells you exactly what you're supposed to do and how to run the basic functions. Press here for photos, slide to switch to capture modes, press shutter to shoot. There's again those memory cards that it recommends you buy. They're right there. And then there's the app. You can get it on the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store for whatever device you have. I have an iPhone 6s, and therefore I went to the Apple iOS store. We're going to see that in a minute. Oh, and the great thing about that is you can upgrade the firmware from the app on your smartphone. And we're going to see that process. Now, oh, and it says please select your location, United States, and then the Wi-Fi frequency. You can do 5G Wi-Fi or like 2.5G. And again, you can change that at any time. Check with your phone or tablet manufacturer, and then it says enjoy your Yi 4K Plus action camera. And the English in the menu is very good. It is proper English so far as I can tell. And there's your screen, and you can see that it is nice and bright. The color depth is good. It even looks good when it's being shot through another camera lens. So I just turned it off there, and the next scene I'm going to get my phone, so there you go. You're going to want to go ahead and get the app. Go ahead and install it, and it's going to take, you know, a few minutes depending on the speed of your Wi-Fi and or your smartphone data. I have it on Wi-Fi, so it's pretty fast. Now, this app will show the picture, I think, of the original Yi 4K action camera. Don't worry, because this app, from what I can tell, works for the 4 different camera models that Yi makes. The original Yi, the new Yi Lite, the Yi 4K, and the new Yi 4K Plus. And there'll be a section coming up in a second where it's going to say, hey, you know, pick your camera. And you're going to need to do that before you can pair it with the Wi-Fi. So that's just going to take a second. And there's the app launching up. So let's just talk about... The app is very user-friendly. And it'll ask you to select your camera model. And then it'll tell you, you know, of course, and there it is, all the different camera models. So you're just going to go ahead and select which one you have. And if you have the Yi 4K or the new Yi Lite or the original Yi, you can go ahead and select that. But we're going to select the Yi 4K Plus action camera. Now, what it does is it will check with your camera to see what firmware is installed on the camera. And if it's not the most recent firmware, there's going to be an option to change it. And you will go ahead and it'll connect with the camera, and then it'll overwrite the camera, and it'll go through its internal its internal process of building in the new firmware, and you're going to get a progress bar. But of course, as you see, the first thing you need to do is turn on the Wi-Fi on the camera, and you do that through the touchscreen using that little cogwheel icon. So, one of the things I like a lot about the E4K Action Plus was setting it up. You get progress bars, and it tells you what it's doing. On a camera like the ThiEye T5V, you didn't get progress bars when you were updating the firmware. So when something went wrong, you didn't really know it went wrong, and it was kind of a mess. Now, one of the things that you're going to find in the E4K Plus is also a great sensor by Sony, the Sony IMX377 12 megapixel sensor with a 7 glass lens, the Ambarella H2 chipset, quad-core Cortex A53 ARM processor, and of course that 2.2-inch touchscreen display. They say it's a Retina touchscreen, but I don't think they have permission from Apple to use that, and if they do, I apologize. Also, this review is not sponsored by Yi or anyone else. I am doing this of my own free volition, as someone who purchases action cameras and likes to use them. Okay, folks out there in YouTube land, are you still with me? I know this has been a long review, and here we are, receiving the firmware. I was trying to read that without my eyeglasses on, and my eyes are not so good. But what you see here is the process of the Yi flashing that firmware. Okay, and it says it's updating the firmware. This screen may stay blank for several seconds. It really didn't. It was just like a little bit of a second. And, oh, there it is, and it's doing its thing. It's CRC checking and all that good stuff. And it tells you exactly what it's doing, which is appreciative, because if you did have a problem, you could write down, okay, it crashed at whatever state, and then you could talk with the Yi support. And there is an actual Yi support. This is not a fly-by-night company. At least not yet. They've been around, and they've been making some serious inroads, and they have customer service. And then when you update your firmware, you're going to see this screen again. Tutorial. Now, the tutorial was pretty much the exact same thing, but maybe in newer firmware updates, if they add or change features, then you might see different screens. Okay, so now we're going to get to some of the good stuff. Well, first I'm just going to show you around on the menu and how easy it is to navigate. You've got your resolution, your field of view, and your metering mode. And then you have your different stuff. That's under the camera icon. Under the cogwheel icon, or gear icon, you get your different things like adjust lens distortion. And it does that without really cropping in on the image, which is what the ThiEye T5E did and some of the SJ cams would do. So this is a true lens distortion correction, not just changing the field of view, but you can change the field of view if you so choose on the E4K Action Plus, as you can see right there. Auto low light is grayed out, and it seems to be grayed out, and I'm going to research if maybe that was a disabled feature due to a firmware thing. I do believe I read that they did that in different models, and you can even change your shutter speed. You can lock the ISO. You can adjust sharpness, exposure value, and of course you can turn electronic image stabilization on and off. You can turn on the time and date stamp, you can adjust the maximum file size, all that good stuff, and I turned the time and date stamp on. So in a minute, you're going to actually see video from the E4K Action Plus, and I apologize that it took nearly 20 minutes. but there was a lot to go over and a lot to get off my chest. Now you're going to see a splash screen in just a second here, where I have, typed some words that are coming up, and it's just stuff you need to buy or should buy. Extra batteries and chargers, something to stabilize your video, a good U3 Class 10 micro SD card, and yeah, Star Wars intro. The biggest thing, though, is... What is the biggest thing? The biggest thing is do your research and know what you're getting into, because it is, at the end of the day, it's an action camera, but it's a very good action camera. And you're about to see some real-life footage and real-life audio from the camera. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's hear me talk. So, I talked about the camera having problems with the 64GB memory card. But seeing as I was able to upload to YouTube, I was like, how is that possible if the card is bad? Well, the card's not bad, but the SD card reader on my 2012 MacBook Pro model, which was made in 2013, apparently is not quite up to the task of dealing with U3 cards when it comes to reading off them fast enough. Thus, I either get no video or no audio in both QuickTime and VLC Player. But somehow it was quick enough to upload it to YouTube. But then again, that's a little bit different when you're talking about grabbing files or transferring it over the internet. I don't know. I don't know. So I decided, okay, well, the camera doesn't have any problem writing to the card and playing it back on the camera screen. So the card's not bad. It's fast enough for the camera. What if I transferred the individual video file via the USB Type-C, I believe it is, transfer cable? And guess what? It worked because it was fast enough to correctly write it to my external hard drive, and once it was on the external drive, it, for whatever reason, was quick enough to play, and that was a 2.7K video. This is a 2.7K video. So if you're having a problem, and you're not getting the slow card error on the camera, and you're not getting, and I'm going to go in because it's raining, and I don't have the waterproof case on, and I just got this today, so it's too early to break it. But that's how you fix the problem, people in YouTube land. Okay, so that was me outside, and it was about to pour, and, it is my birthday, so I was getting a birthday dinner, because, it's been a good year for me, and I get some birthday dinners. I bought myself a nice birthday gift, and this is what the E4K Plus looks like inside. Now, the white balance was just set to auto, but it does look like it was a little off, and I should have set it to indoors or adjusted the white balance, but this is just what it looks like, and there is my father's excellent culinary skills. And there we're making some sauce. So that's what it looks like inside. Again, low light. Now we're back outside. This was after the rain shower had passed. Now, this was 2K at 60 FPS. This very long review is going to be cropped down into 1080 at 60 frames per second, only so that it will be a bit quicker to upload to YouTube. I am going to upload the clips that I took in the past 2 to 3 days of all the different clips I took with the action camera in their original resolution and frame rate. And those will be going up on my YouTube channel, and you can click on them and watch them for a better idea. And if I had a good place to put the raw uncompressed files, I would, but I don't. But maybe in the future. YouTube will compress these, and they will not look as good as they look to me right now on my MacBook Pro. Which, by the way, now that I have discovered that workaround for the SD card reader, I mean, this 8 gig this 8 gigabyte MacBook Pro is not having any problem digesting these huge video files. Okay, your mileage may vary on your machine. What it does have problems with is sort of, when it asks you to then put it together as an edited movie. That's where the slowdown and other issues occur, but not now. Just playing them, it's fine. And I actually don't even own a 4K TV, so for me, 4K at the moment is useless. But it's good to have a 4K camera, even if you're down converting into HD, because you'll have more room to play with and more room within the frame to play with when editing for video. Now you can see this well-lit outdoor scene has great color, and again, I just left everything at automatic. I have not really gone too in-depth with the footage yet. You'll see that the colors are accurate. There really isn't any color fringing, and there is no distortion in the wide field of view mode, because I have turned that barrel distortion correction mode on, and it does not, it probably crops in a little bit, but it does not crop in a noticeable amount. Nor does it affect things like image stabilization. With the E4K Plus, you can have EIS turned on and the distortion correction mode turned on at the same time, and that has to do with the new Ambarella chipset that they have in this camera. Now, noise in the image. When you're outdoors, you don't really see a lot of the noise. Indoors, of course, depending on what mode you're using, you will see noise from the sensor, the small sensor trying to compensate for the low light. Here's a scene where it was pointed up towards the sky at 2K in 60 FPS. The sky is blown out. But what I liked is that there was still some color and details in the trees. Normally with a lot of cameras, even some of my more expensive cameras like the Canon Vixia, if I had just left everything set to auto and pointed it at the sky, it would blow out the sky and then completely darken the trees. And here I was pointing it directly up at the sky to see if it would have any sort of recovery. And again, there are different metering modes you can use. I just left mine at automatic. Again, here's that same clip again, but this time I recorded it at 1080 at 60 frames per second, and quality didn't really change much for me because, again, I'm working with HD. My monitor can't really display 4K. The only way I can tell I'm looking at 4K or 2K is that it'll look a little bit sharper, but I don't really have the maximum resolution. I can't take full advantage, but it does look sharper. Now, let's talk about bit rates. The E4K Plus bit rate tops out at 135 megabits per second, I believe. 4K at 30 seems to go at 100 Mbps. No, megabits per second. Sorry, I'm a little bad with these acronyms. The 2K is at 60 megabits per second, which is where the ThiEye T5e would top out in its 4K mode. 1080, you're down to about 45 megabytes per second. I don't even think my Canon Vixia has a bit rate quite that high. Now, in a slow-mo clip that you're going to see separately, I did the 1080 at 120 and the 720 at 240. For the 1080 at 120, you're going to be talking about 19.5 megabits per second. And again, I apologize if that is the wrong terminology. I know there's bits and bytes, and I get confused sometimes. I apologize. But anyways, so the video will look a little bit cloudier, but it will not have that grating edge effect or any sort of flashing. And it looks really good. 720, you're down to 10.11 megabits or megabytes per second, whatever the true verbiage is. And yes, it'll look a little bit cloudier, but the 240 frames per second is awesome. And the resolution and the bitrate is good enough that it will not distract you from the awesome slow motion. And there's also no cropping in on the lower resolution at slow-mo, which is something I've seen in other action cameras. So you don't really lose anything. Now, there are two color modes. There's Yi Color, which I'm using, and then there's a flat color mode for color grading and post-production. I have not used that yet, but I have seen other people use it, and it looks really cool, and I will use it in the future. But I wanted to see what the Yi color profile looked like, and yes, it does tend to be warm, tending towards orange and red, but the skin tones look normal, except in that one shot where I didn't have the white balance set correctly. But if you wanted to, change it to a cooler color profile, even with a basic video editing program, it would be very easy to do. Or you could just shoot in the Yi flat and then use a lookup table or your own color grading system. And here I did, I applied a bleach bypass look to this little clip here. Now the next clip we're going to see is again indoors, and I got a really neat birthday gift that I wasn't even expecting, of some vintage 1970s Lafayette Radio Electronics Company model number HA300B CB radio. I'm not sure if they're still legal to operate. I know you no longer need an FCC license, but heck, this came from a, I'm sorry to get sidetracked, but it's really cool and I'm excited. And there'll be a video about it. They even come with the original FCC license issued on December 5th, 1971, which is just freaking cool. Yeah, I got some old CB radio stuff. And this is an indoor low-light shot. 2.7K at 60 frames per second. Everything just set to normal. There I am with all the cool stuff. Yeah, they found it at an antiques. My sister found these at an antique dealership, and newsflash, they work. Not only do they turn on and make noise. If you hit the transmit button, which I may or may not have done, you will transmit your voice over the Citizens Band radio. If that was illegal, I apologize to the FCC. Please don't break my door down. But yes, I will not do that again in case it was illegal until I'm sure for certain. But here they are. That's pretty cool. They actually work. Now on to the good stuff. So here you go, ladies and gentlemen. Here's some good stuff. This is 4K at 60 frames per second. This is at Burridge Wildlife Management Area on the border of Halifax and Hanson, Massachusetts. This is originally shot at 4K at 60 frames per second. And yeah, this is beautiful. So, is the Yi 4K Plus the best action camera ever? Well, that's sort of a loaded question because they're still making new action cameras out there, and who knows? There may be better ones in the future than this. But this is definitely what I would call a professional action camera. It's better than, the $100 range action cameras. This is worth the money. And that's really what this review is about. Is it worth the money? Heck yes. If you want impeccable video quality, very good sound quality, and usability, and a company who will stand by your products, right now there are only 3 companies that make action cameras that I can think of that will do that. And they are Yi, with their lineup of the Yi 4K Plus, E4K, the Yi Lite, and the original Yi. There is SJ Cam, with their plethora of different action cameras for every budget. And by the way, it looks like they're going to be making an SJ8 cam that'll probably compete with the E4K Plus, and will probably be much more expensive than the SJ7 Star. And then, of course, there is the GoPro and their GoPros. And they sort of started it all, ladies and gentlemen. So yes, the E4K is an extremely good action camera. I can't say it's the best ever action camera, but it's the best on the market right now. And yes, I think it's better than the GoPro Hero 5, simply because it's cheaper than the GoPro Hero 5 and does all the stuff, except it's not waterproof without a case. But that's not really a very big deal for me personally, and if it's not a big deal for you either, then I would recommend getting the E4K Plus action camera. So, please enjoy these shots. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoy. There will be more videos about cool stuff in the future. Thank you, and have a pleasant tomorrow.